What we out here, do you know what we out here to do?
You mentioned this, not trying to educate.
We're trying to educate. Hey, give me that in, what's that, Amos 9:11. Amos 9:11. So this is what we out here to do. We're going to show you real quick, and we're going to bring you up to speed on how special you are and how great you are. Because this world was not made for you. Because it's run by the damn devil. Let me show you what we out here to do. Amos chapter 9, verse 11.
It's the book. It's the book of Amos. It's the book.
This for you, David.
It's the book of Amos, chapter 9, and verse 11.
Uh-huh.
In that day, I will raise up the tabernacle of David.
So God says that today is that day where he's raising back up the tabernacle of David. What is a tabernacle? It's a habitation, but it's also a place of worship. You are the place where God's Spirit is going to inhabit. And guess what? We are building back our temple. We're building back our nation, which is going to be the place where all kingdoms are going to come to worship and learn the law. So you're going to be a king serving the one true king, which is God, which is Christ. So read that.
I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen.
We have fallen. What have we fallen into? Slavery, captivity, 400 years. We were slaves for 400 years in Egypt. Now we're slaves for 400 years in this spiritual Egypt. When you look at the sign, right here. When you look at the sign, you can also see on the back of the dollar bill, you see a pyramid, right? Why is that there? To remind us of where we are. Spiritual Egypt was physical Egypt was where we were slaves for 400 years building pyramids. Now, we built America for 400 years and they still profited off of us. And Exodus is coming. Read.
I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen and close up the breaches thereof.
So your forefather David and the laws that he kept, his connection with God, how he was the strongest man on earth and he subdued all kingdoms and all nations, that's what you about to get. That's what you about to do. Christ is returning. You understand? So what religion do you believe in, bro? You grew up Christian. Baptist,
Pentecostal.
Pentecostal, right? Let me see that. Pentecostal. You grew up Pentecostal, right? Where did all those Baptist, Mormon, Pentecostal, where did all these religions come from? Where did all those religions come from? You got John Smith. He created the Baptist religion in 1608. White man. Joseph Smith, Mormon religion in 1830. White man. You got Ellen G. White, Adventist religion, 1800s. And guess what? You got Charles T. Russell, Jehovah's Witness, and you got Pentecostal by Charles Parham in the early 1900s. What's one common thing that all of these religions have? They're all started by white people using our Bible, but guess what? It was all started by white people. Where were we in the 1608? No, we were not in Africa. We were here. The Native Americans were here being enslaved. And guess what? 1619, we were here being enslaved. Being brought off of slave ships. Now, when I said slave ships, do you think that's in the Bible? No. Give me that. Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. God said that I'm gonna show you what the scripture says, and I'm gonna show you why it happened. We gotta bring you up to speed because you got a mighty king's name on you, King David, right? Right. But guess what? You gotta understand what happened to your tabernacles, the tabernacles of David that have fallen. Read. This is how we fell.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again.
Egypt. What does Egypt mean? In the context of what this is talking about. What do you think Egypt means? Okay. All right. That's good. But guess what? What condition were we, the Israelites, in Egypt? We were slaves, right? Read that.
It's the book of Exodus, chapter 20, and verse 2.
This is how we know that we're teaching the right doctrine. Is because we're going precept upon precept, line upon line, to get the truth. We're going to find out what God defines Egypt as. Read.
I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt.
Out of the land of what?
Out of the land of Egypt.
What is Egypt, God?
Out of the house of bondage.
What is bondage? Slavery, captivity. You a smart brother. I ain't got to work too hard. Read it. Go back to it now.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68.
Now we're going to piece the puzzle together for you, King David. Read that.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
God said he's going to bring us into Egypt, slavery, captivity, in modern times by the way of slave ships. Who does this relate to? That relates to us, big bro. This is talking about the Jews, though. 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years before it happened.
Right.
This is why we believe in the Bible. Read.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again.
So Moses, as he brought us out of Egypt, the Exodus, on the other side, he said, the way I said these things are going to happen to you is the way it's going to happen to you. And read that next part.
And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
So he said, you will not see your homeland, or you will not see Egypt again as a nation. Who's living in Egypt right now? Arabs. Who's living in Israel right now? White people. Is this not true? And he said, what about captivity? What did he say?
And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
And when we got to America, which was the destination off the west coast of Africa where they brought us from, when we got to America, guess what? What would they do to us? They would sell us. That's what the Bible just said. We will be sold, 445, sold to Master Charles in North Carolina. And our families will be broken up and split up. You understand? Read.
For bondmen and
for slave men
and bond women
and slave women. Read.
And no man shall buy you.
And no man shall buy thee. What do you think that means, King David? Because it's an old Quaker word. You may not know what it means. Yeah, so when it says buy, it's not talking about buy as in the fact of going to a store. It's talking about back in the day when if you became a servant under tribute under somebody else because you didn't have no money, just like we serve all these corporations. They would pay you. Your family member would be able to buy you out of that debt or that slavery, right? Indentured servitude, right? But he said in this captivity, the whole nation of Israel will be in slavery. Therefore, no family member will be able to redeem you or buy you out of that slavery. Harriet Tubman, not Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, no revolutionary, no matter how brilliant they would be able to redeem you out of this slavery which we are still in today. Read. No, I don't need that. Give me that verse 48.
That's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies.
So God said after we got off them slave ships, we would have to serve our enemies. These people who set up all of these religions. We would have to serve them in politics. We used to have to serve them in all these different ways. Read.
Which the Lord shall send against thee.
Well, first of all, did you believe that we have enemies?
Technically.
All right, so who would you imagine those enemies to be? Because we got to stick with that for a second. God said you have enemies. Who are those enemies? Give me that in Nehemiah 9. What is that? 5 and 9. Who are our enemies? Yes. Read. Let's go. We're going to see what God says. Read.
It's the book of Nehemiah, chapter 5 and verse 9.
Uh-huh.
Also I said, it is not good that ye do. Ought ye not to walk in the fear of our God?
Here it goes.
Because of the reproach of the heathen, our enemies.
The reproach, meaning the hatred of our enemies, who are the heathen. The heathen are all nations outside of the 12 tribes of Israel.
That's right.
If they're not so-called Black, Hispanic, or Native American, they are. God says that he made them to be our enemies. Did you know that, family? You didn't know that. So guess what? You didn't know that you were in a war, and you didn't know that who your enemies were, so you didn't even know where it was coming from.
That's right.
You understand? Read that in Deuteronomy. Back in Deuteronomy. Now that we know who our enemies are, read.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48.
What did God say our enemies would do to us? Read.
Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies,
We would have to serve them. Read.
which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger.
Who sent our enemies against us, King David? God. God sent our enemies against us. We finna find out why. Read.
In hunger and
In hunger. In hunger. God said that we will be a nation who will have to go to our enemies in hunger. Grocery stores. Where do we go to? Who do we have to pay to get all the food that we get? Our enemies. They run the Costco's, they run the Walmarts, they everywhere you want to eat. And even if we own a little mom and pop restaurant that sells fish and chips or something like that, who do they have to go to to get the fish to get the fish? Same enemies. There you go. Say that here.
Same enemies.
That's a smart brother right there. Read.
and in thirst.
And in thirst. So who do we pay our water bill to? Definitely our enemies every month, right? Like clockwork. We don't own Dasani. We don't own none of the drink factories. None of it. Read.
And in nakedness.
And in nakedness. Even if we have Sean John, Fat Farm, FUBU, Rockaware, any of that, who do they have to go to get the raw textiles in order to make the fabric, in order to use the fabrics?
12 tribes.
We got not the 12 tribes. We got to go to our enemies. Read.
And in want of all things.
And in lack. Want means lack. If you want something, that means you don't have it. So want of all things and lack of all things. So guess what? Birth certificate. Go to our enemies. Death certificate. Driver's license. Credit. Every aspect of life, we would have to turn to our enemies to get that. Is that not slavery? That's slavery. But guess what? Instead of them having us on the plantation, now we're free-range slaves. So they let us off the plantation, and now we have to go and find a job to be able to work. We have to find a plantation to work for. We have to do all the duty, because they used to, when we were in slavery, they used to actually give us the clothing. They used to actually give us certain things. Now we have to go and work for even that. And that's what God said. Read.
And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck.
God said that our enemies, the so-called white man, will put a yoke of iron upon our neck. Read.
Until he have destroyed thee.
Until we had no identity. Until he took us into slavery. God allowed the so-called white man and the other nations to take us into slavery, verse 15, and destroy us and beat us into the point. Have you seen Roots? Yeah. Kunta Kinte. Right? Kunta Kinte. They beat him. Why did they beat him? What was they beating him for? To take his identity. So he went from Kunta to what? To Toby. We went from Israel to African American.
That's right.
We went from the tribes of Judah, the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, so forth and so on, to Mexican, African American, niggers, Negroes, Afro-American. That's what the Bible is saying would happen to us.
What is a nation? Nation is family. Nation is community. Nation is men leading by example. Nation is women's support. Nation is children with role models.